Hey class. Um, Today we have a shorter lecture. Just want to briefly go over resources, talking about resources. So welcome to week 9, and we are going to start by acknowledging that resources and interventions are different. Um, Interventions is what you did last week when you created your own ideas for how you might want to support kids with grief and loss based on their developmental age, where resources is something that you are providing to the family for them to utilize that is maybe not necessarily you doing it. You're not necessarily doing the teaching, you're not necessarily doing um, the individual support, or for example, if it goes outside of your scope, which we'll talk about momentarily, or maybe you do sit and talk with a parent about it, and it's a guideline for how they can provide support at home. Um, so that would be more of a resource. Or when I looked it up on Google for a definition, it said other assets that can be drawn on by a person or organization in order to function effectively in an action or strategy. So providing a resource is something that can help them to do something successfully, whether that's supporting their child or supporting their family. It can look like different things. So um, an intervention would refer to any action taken by the clinician within the clinical setting to improve, maintain, or assess a patient. This could include a treatment or um, some type of engagement with the child um, with an aimed goal to modify behavior, modify understanding. Um, yeah, and these two concepts can overlap. Resources could be utilized within your intervention. Um, so there is that, but they are different because one is more what you do, one of them is more of what you offer. So within whatever job or role you end up when you're able to be working with child life, um, I recommend that you learn your local community. You get to know the populations that you serve. A lot of times, if you're within your hospital or within your clinic or wherever you're working, you're going to have the population may vary based off of who lives in your area, who comes to the hospital. Is it a larger urban hospital that has people come from all over the United States or even sometimes global patients from the world? Do you have a program that has to do with global interrelations and you get a lot of patients from a certain area, a certain country, a certain nationality? Or do you have cultural groups in your area that frequent your hospital? I'm in Upper Manhattan. We have a lot of, we're in a community, a Latinx community, a Dominican Republic, a lot of families from that area, Spanish speaking families. So that's a big population that I serve. And also, I mentioned before, we have a lot of Jewish patients and families, both Orthodox and Hasidic, as well as Reformed. So there's a spectrum of what that might look like. But I had to take the time to get to know those populations because they were not necessarily something I was familiar with before working at this hospital. Um, so get to know the populations that you serve, and also that could be a certain diagnosis, right? So if you work with the hematology oncology unit or patients, you get to know the resources that exist for hemonc patients. And similarly, if it was kidney, cardiac patients, I happen to have a lot of spinal fusion patients. That's because I work in the neuro ortho ICU. So I get to know the populations and the communities that you serve and what's available to those communities. And also consider those local and what about national resources. So with the HEMONC population, there are national programs that would be appropriate. Or if you're working with end of life patients or life limiting, life threatening illnesses, and we're talking about, grief and loss, you can also consider things like Make-A-Wish, which is like a national resource, right? So this family would qualify. How do you connect them? What's the process at your hospital to connect them? Whether it's asking social work to put in a referral, maybe you as Child Life would be able to do the consult yourself. But those are things to think about. In New York City, we have a smaller version of Make-A-Wish, called something like Fairy Godmother program or something. So just knowing what's available and what you can offer your families. Um, and then understanding virtual resources. So, especially since COVID, there's a lot, even more of resources and more programs have virtual options, right? Um, one thing I'm going to show you, which I was going to show you at the end, now I'm going to show you now, is this. Talk about excuse me, talking about online resources. This is called Wonders and Worries. It's a child life resource. Um, it's for it's a nonprofit that provides supports for parents and professionals outside of a typical child life program. So we often will use this to provide support for our patients of adult um, no, choose me, children of adult patients that are in the adult side of our hospital that we don't have child life coverage. This is a great resource. It's actually free. It's no cost to the family. And the idea is that they can provide support directly for how they can support their child if the adult has an illness. I talked about this a little bit in previous lectures, but this is the actual website. And I just wanted to share this an example because they do a lot of online. I believe it's mostly, if not all, online. And then they also have resources available here. And also as a student or as a new professional, even as experienced, they have great like webinars and in-services. So that's something to consider in the future. Just getting connected with this group. I've watched a lot of great webinars and gotten PDUs to maintain my certification. All right, so that is that slide. Next is when we talk about resources, it can be money. It can be social support, right? So um, I said both of those quickly. The second one here is social resources, which may be applicable. So sometimes you have a family that is dealing with a very sick, ill child. They're struggling potentially with thinking of multiple things. They might be struggling with their financial resources to maintain their rent, to maintain their putting food on the table for their family who is not sick and in the hospital. Um, So these are things to consider. And sometimes the resources that we provide, and once again, this is kind of how it can be an intervention, right? If you work with social work and help to connect a family that um, needs the financial support, maybe it's that you work with social work and help to get them some type of food vouchers, you help to connect them to public insurance, maybe public housing. Maybe you help to connect them to a program that will pay for their living expenses. Social work could be able to know organizations that support childcare. Um, a lot of that can be based off of where you are graph geographically. So it could be related to the smaller community, your town, the hospital itself. It also could be related to the state you're in. So it's hard to say what resources are available until you start to know where you're working. But that's something to consider. And then here it says cultural groups. So there could be like, for example, me working with Jewish community, they have various programs that are Jewish focused and they help to meet the Jewish, both just supporting the families in general. They'll bring kosher meals to the families. Um, they can be involved in maybe they provide some religious or spiritual support. They can be involved in, I've been involved in family meetings where they have an advocate come who kind of helps to meet the cultural need to the medical environment. Um, and they have been involved in providing resources like things that are needed. A patient wants to have a music player to play songs, and the songs are specific within the culture of the Jewish culture that I might not know or have access to, and they are able to connect me, or I'm connect with them with this group, the patient family with this group, and then they're able to get those things. Um, it could be based on age, like age specific support could be groups that have to do with like autism, right? Autism support, Facebook groups. A lot of students that are working towards child life are already involved in groups that are related to um, groups that are related to other students going through similar things, trying to get certified, trying to get an internship, and there's a lot of conversation, and it's a great support group, right? So there could be groups that are in your community that are online that are for parents to support kids during bereavement or um, like support groups for bereaved children of specific ages. Um, Near us, there's a few in the New York, New Jersey area. There's some camps that do specific either time frames or the whole camp is designated to grief. Like Camp Aaron is one. I just remember it. I think it's referenced in our textbook this week even, and it's a camp which focuses on grief and bereavement. So it's supporting children during that. Um, if a child goes through an amputation, when we talk about that loss and grief and how that can be related to loss because it's a symbolic loss, what about connecting them with other kids or teens or people who have similar experiences with an amputation, right? So you could be creative and you can do your own research to find those things. And a lot of times I have a unique patient, a situation that's come up, and I start to look for resources for them. So then that's where you go, okay, what do I have available at our hospital within my department? Maybe like there are times that I got a donation of laptop computers for specifically the family who donated wanted us to provide them, not just give them out to everybody, but look for the long-term patients that really need this support because they don't have the financial means to have something like that, right? So I had those in my cabinets, and when I have the right patient, then I gift that to that family, and that can make an impact on their ability to communicate with loved ones, to be able to be entertained during the hospital, um, to be able to do their own research, to be able to maybe they're looking for jobs, the parents, maybe they're connecting with others, and because I had that laptop, I can make a difference. So that's a resource within my hospital. We have a sibling program at my hospital, so connecting the families to that resource. So that's see how this can be your intervention. It's a resource, it's a referral, but it's internal, right? Connecting them with social work who helps you with all those financial things. Then there's times that maybe you might want to, they might need whoever you're supporting might need something like a licensed therapist or a licensed mental health professional. And so you can be a resource in regards to you knowing a list or knowing who to connect them with to help connect them to get them the right support. A lot of the times this mainly came up because the family would say they have an issue with their sibling at home who's dealing with A, B, or C, and they were struggling how to get their sibling support. I can focus on supporting the child while they're here, but what can I give them when they go home or when they're supporting the sibling at home? We talked about having connected them to support groups, community outside of the hospital. It's important to know and consider your scope of practice. If you start to recognize that um, what the child needs goes beyond your scope, and this goes back to the therapy thing, for example. It can be talking about, oh, well, that sounds like that I provide emotional coping support in regards to the hospital and your medical care. But if you're looking for actual therapy or counseling, then maybe it's about helping the family to find the right resources in your community. It says look for a gap in service. Um, and that can look different based off of different jobs, different where you work. But one example is I have a lot of patients. A lot of times, my spinal patients I don't get to see. A lot of times, they are older, they're teens. They generally understand what's going on. They get a lot of preparation and support moving into surgery. It's a planned procedure, it's not a surprise. And for all of these reasons, they come well prepared. And when comparing a hierarchy of needs, and prioritization on my units, a lot of times my sicker kids, the ones who weren't planning on being here, the traumas, the terminally ill patients, um, I'll have to focus on them. And so that's an example of what a gap in service means. Um, so you'd have to look at your own programs and see what is the gap in service? What are the things you're able to provide? What are the things you're not able to provide? Is it changing the way you do things? Is it connecting with more resources internally? So that way you're minimizing those gap in services. And if you're not able to address those things, are there referrals or references or resources you can provide to help support the patient and family, or the client to get those things? And then learning how to consult those things. So if you have referrals, is it because you know how to connect them? Do you reach out to somebody specifically and say, I have this patient that could be helpful for you? How does that work within HIPAA, right? Maybe if this program is associated with your hospital, you can easily refer them because there's some type of agreement or some plan that's made. Um, Maybe you go to the family and say, I have this resource for you. I'd like to connect you. Is it okay? And I've done that before. I've gotten the HIPAA form filled out and signed to show I had permission to communicate with that organization, like Make-A-Wish. And then be prepared to provide the information the family needs in order to get connected. So this is my last slide, and I just did want to go over the couple things that are related to what I'm showing you. So when I say get to know your community of where you're working, this is a resource that I made because I had many times where I felt like there was whatever the family was asking for was beyond my scope. And I wanted to make sure I wasn't just saying, well, I don't do that. And so I created a list of resources. And honestly, I think I made this during COVID because there was a lot of challenges within that. Families were struggling to balance a hospitalized child, a sick child, while their other child's at home, and everybody's doing school online. And, there's a lot of problems and challenges within that. So I had modified a list of resources I previously had and put together this list. And list is based off of the New York City, New Jersey, and Connecticut, Southern Connecticut area. But it has therapists, it has creative art therapists, and I acknowledge like what populations they serve, what needs they have, their contact information. And also I wanted to put this on there as I reached out to these organizations so that way I could put this. Do they accept insurance plans, right? And how much would a session cost? So that way I'm not handing the family something that they're not going to be able to address. They're not going to move forward with. Um, like this one, Center for Bereavement. And this is similar to what the assignment is that you're asked to do this week. So that's why I'm not sharing this as a PDF because I want you all to be able to explore this yourself and look for what area you would like to come up with this list for. But if I know we have at least one or two in the New York area, and I want to make sure that you're not just reusing these resources and just copying this document. I want you to really explore and research on your own because that's a part of the value of this project. This is one of my old coworkers who actually does child life outside of the hospital and they take referrals. So this is a great example. Okay. So that's that. And I showed you that other website, I believe. So actually, those are the two things I wanted to show you for this week. Um, I went over all of the slides I wanted to go over, and yeah, just wanted to talk about making sure that you learn your resources that you'll be able to use. And getting to know these resources helps to make your job easier. When you know how to support a family that can almost do this on their own, and you've got 5 families that you need to see, and you're able to provide information, tell them how to contact this group, it allows you to focus your attention where it needs to be, and that family has the resources that they need to move forward with that. If knowing where if knowing that I know that at my hospital, social workers can help to pay for a hotel nearby when needed. We also know that Ronald McDonald House is within the city, so the families can stay at Ronald McDonald House while their child is hospitalized in case they're not from the New York City area. So knowing these resources can make a big difference in how you support your patients. So thanks for watching. I hope you are enjoying your last couple weeks. I hope working on the final project is going well. Please reach out if you have any issues or challenges. I hope to continue to be available, and I want to support you all. So thank you all and have a good one.